around the context of like fighting within your marriage. It's not me against you.
Yeah.
It's we are a team,
Yeah,
and
us
so
versus
we're
all.
fighting like for our unity.
Yeah.
It was an Amazon special.
Totally under budget, if I'm being honest.
I gotta shout out that whipped feta dip.
Yeah.
Okay.
We really felt at this point that maybe Gabe and Grace are just going to exist platonically, and that's it, you know. And there's never going to be quality time with Gabe and Grace. It's just going to be separate lives with Gabe and Grace.
Time for love again. My time for love is here.
Welcome back to Quality Time with Gabe and Grace.
I'm Gabe.
And I'm Grace, and this is episode 3.
That's
We
right.
made it.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to be shocked at the beginning of every single new episode, where every time we announce the number, we're like, oh my gosh, we did it. It's here.
We're here. It really is. It's a journey filming an episode, but we're excited to be here.
Totally.
Excited about the feedback that we've gotten from some of the listeners this past week, and just knowing that some of the conversation is hitting home is really exciting. That's what we hoped for. And I'm excited to sit down with you again.
Yeah, let's do it.
So before we jump into the meat of the content this week, I really do want to come back to the segment we introduced last week, which was quality over quantity. We said that each week we'll talk about one thing, just one, that we are enjoying that stuck out. It's kind of like the highlight of the week. So this could be like a product. This could be some content that you're consuming. This could be an experience, a food, beverage, whatever, something that we're going to hype up and just give it a little spotlight. So do you want to kick us off for quality over quantity this week?
I do,
Okay.
but as usual, I need a little bit of context to set the stage.
Yes,
so
please.
let's rewind to the month of December 2024. Okay. So each Christmas, our family does a kind of Yankee swap sort of gift exchange type of thing, right?
Some people call it like a white elephant.
Yes. And so every year we set a budget, you know, and then we buy a gift, and then we draw numbers, and then we exchange. And sometimes you can kind of like steal other people's gifts and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So by the way, the strategy typically is you buy a gift that you kind of want for yourself, just in case, you know, you pull the right straw and you get to actually choose at the end, like, you know what, of all the gifts that I've seen, I'm going to actually go with my gift because it was the best.
Yes.
So anyways, that's the context. So this year I bought a neck massager, like one of those kind of like strap that goes around your neck, and you like put your arms into it and sort of like hold it down because it has these little sleeves, and you just like hold it, you know, in place, and it just starts to like on your neck, and it's amazing. So I thought that would be great for, you know, whoever, right? So your mom actually ended up drawing that straw, and she was like really excited about it. And she was like, oh my gosh, I've needed one of these. And I was really happy to give it to her. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. It's perfect for you.
Yeah, it was an Amazon special.
Totally under budget, if I'm being honest. And so she gets it, and then like maybe not even a week later, she texts you and she's like, hey, P.S., that thing that Gabe bought, like it is a piece of crap. Like it
doesn't work great.
Yeah, it's very cheap, it's clunky. Her exact words were like, it's like strapping a toaster oven to your neck.
Yeah.
And it just didn't really do the trick. So we felt horrible. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I get for buying like the, you know, the random Amazon, you know, neck massager. So we take it back and we say, look, we'll exchange it, and we'll actually just give you a gift card or something like that.
Yeah, get you something that you
so
like.
it's sitting around here for weeks. Now we're in February, and I'm like, man, I need to return that neck massager.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at it in the box, you know, right as I'm about to go to UPS to return it, I'm like, I don't know. It looks interesting. So I just pull it out. I just want to make sure, right, before I send this back to its country of origin. I'm like, this has potential.
Yeah.
So I pull it out. I put it on. I plug it in, which is kind of lame that it needs to be plugged into the wall while it's on you. So that's probably what your mom didn't like. But I'm telling you, I hit the button because it's like a little button right here, like, and it just starts just loving me, right? Yeah, I'm just like, oh. And I fall in love with this thing. And I'm like, we're not sending this anywhere. Like, I'm keeping this. I'll just give her money in exchange. And so it's like my new best friend. So like I put it on my neck. I put it on my low back while I'm just like working. The other night I was eating dinner and I had it on, and it was like making the low humming noise that it makes. And you came to the dinner table. You're like, what is that sound?
Yeah.
And I was like, my bad. it's the massager.
Yeah.
So
we need to name it.
yeah, we need to give it a name for sure. Maybe in the comments, tell us what I should name this neck massager, for a little nickname. But I would definitely say that is my quality over quantity. It's ironic because it's a low quality item.
It's kind of subjective.
Yeah, but it's high quality for me. So,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, good. I'm so glad you're enjoying it. Someone needed to enjoy that
yeah,
massager.
That makes one of us. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of like when you go get a pedicure and you're in like the massage chair. It's like this leather chair. It's sort of like a piece of that you carry around
you,
with
just
you.
Put a quarter into the arm and then like it runs for 60 seconds. It's like on that level of quality, but we hit it off.
You're loving it.
We hit it off.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
So for me this week, quality over quantity, I was thinking about it and I thought, I have to highlight good old Trader Joe's. So for me, in this season of life with the baby and living 30 minutes away from Trader Joe's, I get to Trader Joe's like once every 2 or 3 months.
Sure.
This was really like my second time venturing out to Trader Joe's since having the baby in August.
It's been that long.
That's
crazy.
And so I was so excited to go because, if you don't shop at Trader Joe's, it's like there's so many fun things and items you just don't find anywhere else. And honestly, like the experience of just like walking into a grocery store and you're immediately in like the floral section as soon as you enter, it's just so
That's
fun.
probably my least
so
favorite
welcoming.
part because I always have to talk you out of like buying, 17 orchids or whatever they're offering.
Well, it's just such a bright entrance. And then you go right into the produce department and you go to that dip section that has like every cold dip that you could ever think of wanting. A couple I want to highlight, but I'm going to highlight one this week. And so I'm going to shout out that vegan buffalo dip. I'm going to shout out that Greek yogurt, kale, spinach dip. Okay. But the one I want to highlight, the one quality item. Sorry.
Like 3.
It was like a preface. It was a little bit of like a context, like you said.
Okay, gotcha.
The quality item for this week is, yes, it's Trader Joe's, but I got to shout out that whipped feta dip.
Yeah.
Okay. Take the whipped feta dip and put it with those pita crackers.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah. You gave me one. It was fire. It was super good.
Yeah. That's all it needs. I just needed to drop that for those Trader Joe's lovers. They can make their way over there this week.
Yeah.
And grab it.
Shout out to Trader Joe's. If you want to sponsor this episode, I'm listening.
Yeah. We're here for you.
Yeah.
You're here for us.
You're here for us.
So fun. Love hearing what's the highlight of your week. So let's get into the topic for this week. In episode 1, we introduced ourselves as, yes, a married couple, but we also said we're best friends.
Yes.
And we said this has been a lengthy best friendship. And I've just been thinking about that and how, it's a little cliche. A lot of people say like your spouse should be your best friend, but it really is some good advice that I think we heard early on. I actually remember you having like a mentor, a pastor in your life that was like, marry the person that you're going to like crack up with in the middle of the night, like when some crisis happens. You can be like dying laughing to your crying kind of thing. And we always talked about that of like, yeah, that's definitely us. We've been able to find humor and relief in tough moments for sure. But when we call each other best friends, I would say that really is the strength and the foundation of our relationship. So before we go any further, I want you to kind of explain to the listeners what we mean by best friend, because you differentiated years ago, back when we first dated, between a best friend and a favorite friend. And I always loved that. And I feel like we always come back to that as like a filter for friends. Sure. And so what would you say is the difference between a best friend and a favorite friend? Kind of break that down.
Yeah. So that all started as an observation where, I think I was looking at our relationship and realizing that there's something happening that maybe wasn't happening in some of my other relationships or friendships where we often conflate the term best friend maybe with favorite friend. And what I mean by that is there's the person that you love to hang out with for a good time. Yes. You love to call when you're thinking about going on a trip or even just when you're throwing around that title, you're like, oh, this is my best friend. Yeah. But what you really might mean is this is my favorite friend. This is the person that I just like to
have a good time together.
Yeah, exactly. And so the maybe distinction that I was trying to point out is that best friends seem more like someone who is best for you. So that's maybe someone who is holding you accountable or challenging you, pulling you up. Maybe they're little bit more mature in certain areas of life, or maybe even in their faith, or, in their, in the way that they carry themselves, whatever the case may be. And so it was kind of this thought that, wouldn't it be incredible if you can really hit both in the same relationship, where you have a best friend that is best for you, that also happens to be the person that you really care to be around. So it's almost the difference between, like, when I've told you, like, I not only love you, I like you a lot. I like being around you. And so it's kind of like akin to that same sort of relationship. And so, I think years ago, I think I was just trying to point out that, like, you are both for me. You are my favorite friend. You are my best friend. And also maybe a challenge to both of us to look at our relationships and recognize some of the differences, not in any weird sort of discriminatory way where it's like, oh, that person to the favorite list, you know what I mean? But really just to always have that filter in when we're meeting new people and when we're cultivating relationships, especially when you're allowing people in the deepest parts of your life, that you're really making sure that you're making wise choices, because, I'm reminded of that age-old adage that I feel like everyone's dad has told them at one time or another, or you saw in a movie. It's like, you show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Yeah, so like you're the accumulation of the 5 closest people to you, that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so good that we can, have awareness to what relationships play what role in our lives when it comes to, like, evaluating friendships. But then when it comes to marriage, I do think what an awesome goal, like, to be both best friends and favorite friends. And I think it's something that we always hold near and dear to, like, this is how we want to live our marriage out. Like, we do want to be each other's favorite. We also want to be that best friend and really pull the best out of each other. And I have to shout you out. I always tell you, you're such a good friend, like, not just to me, but I feel like you have the gift of friendship. Like, if you know Gabe, he's a good friend. And if you don't know Gabe, you should get to know him.
You're lost. No,
but no, I think that oftentimes I see the way that you are so proactive in your friendships, and I'm like, man, I need to step it up. Sure. So what I want to do today is I want to kind of take the listeners through, like, a Cliff Notes version of our story, just to let people in a little bit more, to know a little bit more about us without going into all the nitty-gritty details. But you, being the friend that you are, I would love to kind of bounce questions off of you, or bounce some themes off of you as we go, and hear what you have to say in regard to, like, where that best friendship was formed, maybe where we saw it then, how it carries into today, that kind of a thing. So if that's okay with you, I'm going to kind of take the listeners behind the scenes and take them back over a decade, almost 2 decades, and kind of get back to the beginning.
Awesome. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Okay. Maybe a little bit cheesy, but easy to remember. I came up with 5 attributes that a best friend is able to exemplify. So they are the 5 F's of best friendship.
Sounds good already.
So that is able to forgive, to have fun, to fight, which we'll break that down more, to feel, and to feed. And we'll get into
already.
What that means. So I want to take the listeners all the way back to 2008-ish, 2007-8-ish. This is when, we were dating for the first time. We had a little bit of a saga of several periods of time where we dated and broke up and dated and broke up. So this was the first time. And basically, I was getting close to graduating high school. You are a few years older than me. Yep. And at this time, I had really started walking with the Lord in a more close-knit way, and was really trying to live my life in surrender, in prayer, asking God, what do you have, instead of kind of just doing everything I wanted to do. Yeah. And so I would like to explain it like my life started to sort of unravel. My plans started to unravel at this time. So I was getting ready to graduate, and I was really feeling like God was putting something specific on my heart to make a move to Dallas, Texas. So we were living in Florida at the time, and I was feeling this call, this pull to go to this Bible ministry music school out in Dallas. Yeah. So I had this in my heart, and I hadn't shared it with anyone. And I was really kind of like, oh, am I actually going to do this? But I really knew that this was something that God was asking me to do and really calling me to do. So I shared it with you. I remember exactly where we were after this date night. We were like sitting in this gazebo and I was telling you, like, kind of like a little fearfully, like, I feel like this is what God has said about going out to Texas. And I'm thinking you're going to say like, no way, you got to stay here so we can stay together and keep dating. And
well, that was my first thought,
Yeah.
Let's keep it real.
But you selflessly, as a good friend would, and as a good boyfriend, I suppose in this context, you said like, no, you've got to go. Like, this is awesome, first of all, and you need to walk in obedience and go and do this thing. Yeah. And so that was kind of the release that you kind of gave me, and really just the encouragement to go and to be obedient and do what God was kind of calling me to do. And so went off there. 3 years, we're kind of living in separate states. We try to date long distance, doesn't really work out. Nobody wants to move to where the other person is. And so it's just kind of like, where is this going? So we don't end up staying together. But fast forward circa 2012, I've been back in Florida now for a little bit. We've sort of reconnected as friends, and it's been a little awkward. And we're thinking that chapter of dating is probably over.
Dunzo, yeah.
But there is a night that really stands out in our story to me, and I kind of call it like the night of forgiveness. Yeah. And so this laid a foundation, I think, for us to get back together, us to date for a final time. Why don't you unpack what that was like?
Well, the scene was set at Starbucks.
Oh, so, I was going to have it go unnamed.
Yeah, I know. So that's
dare
already
I say Starbucks.
Just, well, let's be kind. The coffee was the least of our problems that night. So anyways, I mean, I think the important context leading up to that is, like you said, we both thought that maybe it just wasn't time or wasn't in the cards for us. Like we really felt at this point that maybe Gabe and Grace are just going to exist platonically, and that's it, and there's never going to be quality time with Gabe and Grace. It's just going to be separate lives with Gabe and Grace.
I remember actually one of us said like, this is like, I feel like that chapter is like closing tonight. And so that was interesting, because looking back, I see that as almost like the chapter.
That's when the book opened wide open. Yeah. No, so anyways, we went into that conversation, I think, in a really good, neutral, state of mind and a heart posture. And so that allowed us to have a very honest conversation, because I think we had, taken hurts from each other in miscommunications, just even like feeling different ways at different times. Missed expectations, disappointments. Absolutely. So that night, enough time had gone by, and I think we both were doing our own thing. We felt called. We felt like we were doing what God had us to do, in our different cities. And so
living purposefully in different directions.
So when you, and that's maybe a lesson right there, that like when you're really following what you feel the Lord has called you to, that takes up space, that occupies the empty void that can otherwise be filled with, longings that maybe aren't right, for that time or aren't right at all. Yeah. And so especially toward a person. And so we met that night, and we had this long conversation. We both came to the table ready to apologize for things, ready to ask for forgiveness for a lot of things. And that was powerful to actually be able to articulate it. I know for me, I was kind of apologizing for lack of clear communication and sort of stating my intentions. Yeah. I was the man, I was the older party, but yet I felt like, I hadn't fully matured in the earlier parts of our marriage. I'm sorry, our dating. And so at that point, I felt like I had done some growing. And so I just was like owning that. I'm like, I'm sorry. There were some things that I feel I could have been more clear on that would have, allowed you to understand where we were. It was almost like we needed to have the define the relationship conversation, and we never fully went Facebook official, if you will. So that was huge to hear that. And then also kind of to release each other, because the context for people that don't know us is that, the story of Gabe and Grace starts very early, and now it seems like, we've known each other and been together for forever. But at the time, it also still felt like, man, we'd been off and on for forever, which is funny now, because that was like over a decade ago. But there was so much pressure. It was kind of like the peanut gallery, always asking like, so when are you guys going to get together? When, what? Yeah. I'm like, dude, we're so young.
What's the status?
Yeah, what's the status? I was just always thinking, man, this is so unnecessarily pressurized. And it's actually negatively affecting what could be a healthy relationship. Sure. So I think we depressurized the valve that night, and we're like, hey, I'm good. Are you good? You know, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to date. We sure as heck don't have to get married. I appreciate you. I'd love to be friends. I don't want to see you around town and run the other way. I want it to just be clean and fresh slate.
Yeah.
And so I think the irony is that, at least from my angle, it almost felt like because we came in that posture and said what each other needed to say, I think we both, if like you could, put a split screen, if it was like a movie scene, we both kind of like left thinking, wait a second, that's not what I came here to do. I came here to like close a chapter, but now that
it felt so healed.
Yeah, there was fresh. So much closure that it was almost like, well, I kind of want to reopen it,
Yeah.
And it wasn't immediate. Obviously, we didn't like call each other that night. We're like,
no,
I messed up. Like the movie scene where I'm like running to the airport, like Tom Cruise, like, don't get on that plane. Like it took some time. We really thought maybe it was over.
Yeah.
And then I think the Lord was just, slowly working on us and
for sure,
kind of revealing to us how much that healing was needed so that we could actually move forward, in a real serious capacity. So
yeah, I think there's definitely an element of humility, of maturity that like enters in at that part of our story, that we were able to get to that place of like apologizing to one another and forgiveness. But then let's take that now. So forgiveness, of course, that is an attribute of being a best friend. In marriage, forgiveness, how do you see that play out now? Like, did that set us off on the right foot? Like, where?
I'm often reminded not just of that conversation, but countless conversations that we've had where we've come to the table and clearly stated the thing that we're asking forgiveness for. I think that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, I'm sorry. It's like, I'm sorry for this specific thing.
Yes.
Will you forgive me for this specific thing?
Yep.
And it's showing you, or you showing me, that we understand the wrong.
Right.
And so if I'm asking you to clear the debt, I want the balance to show properly, right?
Yeah.
So that's been a huge help for us.
In summary, I would say a best friend knows how to ask for forgiveness and knows how to also extend forgiveness.
Yep.
And so a lesson I think we're always growing in, and I think that we grasped it first on that night. So that was the night of forgiveness. Now let's fast forward. So now we're dating for the final time. So 2013, 2014, 2015, we're dating, getting engaged. And during that season, we're just having so much fun. We're dating long distance.
Yeah.
So we're just having such a good time every time we're together. It's fun. It's always a lot of laughs. I mean, it's just a good time. So a best friend knows how to have fun, knows how to make you laugh. There is that enjoyability about a best friend. Sure. But tell the listeners about what sort of worried you about that aspect of our relationship, which I think is just kind of interesting, but also how that's concluded and like where you've found peace or understanding about that element of our relationship of like the goof.
The goof. Yeah. So the context there is that I think we were being goofy and we were having fun because in a way we were also really trying to set healthy boundaries for our relationship in the level of depth that we allowed ourselves to go, especially this third time around. So, we wanted to run the race well and make it to the finish line at the right time and not sort of peak prematurely, if you will. Yeah. And I think part of that was like even setting boundaries around how deeply or how often we told each other we loved each other even, which sounds crazy maybe to, the outside world. But for us, it was like, if we go so deep into this, this deep well that we felt we shared about our love and this and that, we almost were concerned that it would make us struggle in the waiting where we're like, man, this is like, we cannot wait to get married. And now we're like, we have nowhere to go because we've just like, we've got to the finish line early. Right. So I think the goof was almost like a kind of a natural defense mechanism of like, well, let's just have fun. Let's keep it light. Yeah. Keep it light. And that continued throughout the entire, relationship, engagement. And I think I had this conversation with you one night where I was like, and maybe kind of in jest, but also kind of seriously, where I was like, are we going to be serious? Like,
are we going to know how to be serious?
We used to even like almost nonstop talk in like ridiculous voices.
I know. I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah.
Like we sort of have a language now, but we had like
even
a whole thing going on.
Yeah. We were just constantly like talking in strange voices.
Yep.
And I asked you one day, like, do you have any legitimate concerns that we will be able to have a conversation of substance? Yeah. Because we are so goofy that I wonder if we have accidentally missed out on really getting to know each other. You know what I mean? It's like, are we just ultimate best friends that are sure attracted to each other, but like, do we have the ability to actually go deep? You know? And so there's just that moment where we had to kind of pause and check and make sure, can we turn it on, you know, when we get married? Like, will we have adult, like you said, conversations, and will we know how to communicate without using a weird voice? And I think the specifics, to drill down to that further, is sometimes even when we were in conflict, we would whip out the strange voices, like, you know, as a way to deflect. Like if I needed to say something serious to you and maybe, you know, bring up a thing that I wanted you to understand about how you made me feel when you said or did this thing.
Sure.
You know, I would say it kind of in jest with a stupid voice or tone or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a legitimate concern that we obviously worked through. And, you know, spoiler alert, we got into our marriage and well, I will say we definitely learned how to communicate more seriously, but we also still kind of just kept the goof in a way. And I think we have a better balance now where,
for sure,
you know, what we do talk about very seriously, and we alluded to this in episode 1, is like, we're just always dreaming, always talking creatively, always, you know, when we're going on walks, like that's when we're the most serious. But I also think that we can just kind of like oscillate into just silliness, or, you know, we make each other laugh quite a bit.
I think I've always said that the joy of the Lord is our strength is sort of like the scripture of our relationship, because that joy, that just lightness that we have together really is such a strength. Like we could be in the toughest situation and we're just like saying like worst case scenarios to each other and just cracking up about it. And that is just like a sweetness, I think, to keep things light. And so I do come back to best friend knows how to have fun, knows how to make you laugh. And that is important. And there is a need for it, I think, in the seriousness of a marriage.
For sure.
So moving on, now we are married, 2016. I said that best friend knows how to fight for you.
Yep.
So 2016, we get married. And this is part of your vows. We wrote vows for one another, and you said, I will fight for you.
With grit.
Yeah, I think you said
that's the actual
grit.
actual word.
So what does that look like to fight as a best friend, as a spouse, for the other, with the other? What did you mean by that? And how does that play out?
Yeah, I meant a lot of things by the word fight. So figuratively speaking, of course, you know, fighting for your marriage means prioritizing your marriage. It means putting your spouse first. It means fighting for purity, for communication, for intimacy, all of the above. It also could very literally mean what it sounds like, you know, in the sense of, I feel like every guy thinks this way, and I've seen it in countless memes where, you know, depicted by like a husband and wife are walking somewhere, maybe in public, and the wife like maybe
an airport or something.
Yeah, and then the caption is like, me just being a, you know, passenger princess or whatever, like just enjoying myself, where she's like, oh my gosh, look, that girl has such a cute outfit on.
Yeah.
Or, oh, a donut. Can we stop for a donut? And then like the, you know, POV, like what's in the guy's head. And he's like, all right, there's 2 exits behind me. That guy looks kind of creepy. I see a piece of rebar on the floor. I'm going to take that and use that as a weapon.
Yeah.
So you're just always prepared. Like if I'm walking with keys, I'm always like readjusting them when someone's walking toward us, and I'm like making it a shank, like just unnecessarily Jason Bourne things.
Yeah.
So very much literally I'm ready to fight, you know. Try me, bro. One practical example is even just not criticizing each other in public. Yeah. So, you know, if I'm fighting for you and someone makes a comment or, you know, gives an opportunity to like down on their wives because it's like we're talking about, you know, oh, women do this or that, right. You know. And granted, I mean, I don't want to be super legalistic. There's times where you're joking and it's in jest. But that's a slippery slope where you can just get into the habit of, publicly criticizing your partner.
Yeah. Or like around family and
absolutely.
that kind of thing where it's like a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah. And what you're doing is you're planting a seed that you don't realize is getting watered while you're gone, right?
Yeah.
So you've now maybe said something casually that you don't even really mean and that you don't feel has legs to it. But now that person, that party is thinking, well, I'm going to add that to the file on Grace.
Sure.
And I believe that that's true of her. And so then the next time that comes around, I'm going to bring that out or add to it. And then maybe the person that said it, AKA, let's say myself in that example, the next time around, I'm like, wait, why do you think that about my spouse? And they're like, well, because you told me that, And it's like you can just create a future mess for yourself that's just not profitable for anyone involved. So those are a couple of the different ways that, you can fight for your partner. And that's what I meant in those vows. And I think the line with grit is really just realizing that sometimes it takes a sort of undignified, kind of messy effort. I'm not going to let my pride get in the way of this reconciliation and this forgiveness.
Oh, that's good. Because a best friend cares enough about the relationship to fight for it.
Yeah.
And so I love that you said that. And I also think about something we've chatted about a number of times, and that is around the context of fighting within your marriage. It's not me against you. It's we are a team, and so we're fighting for our unity. And so we're both moving towards what is the solution instead of one of us trying to be right. And that always helps. That concept always grounds me of coming back to that and knowing we are on the same team. So moving on to the next F, this is our fourth one, and it is a best friend knows how to feel, meaning feel all the feels, be empathetic. What does that look like for us in our marriage?
Well, again, if you tuned into episode 2, know that we went through a pretty crazy stretch of, fertility issues, infertility, all the things. And that was definitely a time where the feels were feeling, as they say. And, but not just that. I mean, you don't have to have such a deep struggle to embody this F, right? It's really just on the day-to-day, describing your day to your spouse and being able to know that they are going to just be a listening ear. And again, this is that age-old thing for a man to just listen and not rush to fix. That's definitely required a lot of discipline for me because, I mentioned this before where all day at work, I'm in CEO mode and I'm making quick decisions and trying to be honestly as emotionless as possible.
Sure.
So then I come home and you're telling me something that requires a different part of the brain, like EQ versus IQ. And I'm just holding back, I have the answer, or I think I do, right? And so, over almost 9 years of marriage, I've learned to listen, to sort of nod and show that I care. And not just, that's not an act. I've actually learned how to ask questions that one indicates that I was actively listening and paying attention and I'm invested, but two, that probably is going to tee you up to express yourself even further because what I realize is that what you really need to be is just seen and heard. And so once you are maybe at the end of that expression, then I will discern whether, okay, is this a moment where she needs a little bit of, problem solving together or, it's too tender, just give her a hug, kind of say, I hear you, I love you.
And just as much as you've had to learn that, I've had to learn that because I'm so quick to be like, what about this? What about that? Or, like you said, have you prayed about it? Have you done this? Instead of just hearing you out. And so I think we've both had to learn that. But I love that idea of a best friend is not dismissive. A best friend is empathetic, meets you where you are. And there's something I think where your love and your respect grows for one another when you learn how to do that. It's wow, you really do care. You really do see me. And you'll come down into the pit with me for a moment. You won't let me stay there. But you'll come down in there and just be with me. And I think that's so powerful. Okay, so the fifth and final F is feed. And you might be like, what do you mean by feed?
Take me out to dinner each night.
That, please. No, but what I mean by feed is feeds your soul. So as a best friend, you feed the soul of your friend. What does that look like as a husband?
Yeah. So in this context, feeding the soul really means be willing to lay your life down for your wife, for your spouse. And that is obviously strong language and, metaphorical, but in this context, if I'm willing to lay my life down, what I really mean by that is that I'm willing to, put you before me. And so a practical application of that is I'm willing to find out what you love and find out the things that make you smile and the things that bring you joy and that fill you up. Your love language, right? Like we always talk about how the way that you receive love is not always the way that you give it, or vice versa. Right. Yep. And so, husbands really need to do that homework and to be a student of their spouse where, like I have a note actually on my phone that's like all about grace kind of thing where I've just sort of documented over the years, again, the silly things like favorite color, favorite, places to eat or types of cuisine, or honestly, most of it is more like it's what she likes. Like she likes surprises or like thoughtfulness or, you like, spontaneous words of affirmation, or, you love to just be held. Like we do these 20-second hugs where, it's kind of like
get that oxytocin.
Yeah, I got to get that oxy flowing. So little things like that where I'll write it down, not because I'm trying to be cute and score points, but literally because if I'm not putting in the same effort in my marriage as I would in prepping for a meeting that I'm the client or some sort of like income earning venture, then I mean, like that is going against some of those vows I made about fighting for you with grit or, cherishing you beyond all else. And
recently, it must have been postpartum, a friend like gave us a basket or gave me a basket coming home from the hospital, and I was like, wow, like she put everything I love in this basket. How did she know? And you were like, might have told her. So I think your list is pretty accurate. But in summary, we have found that best friendship is a solid foundation to have within our marriage. It's something we started with. We want to surely carry forth. And so we said that a best friend knows how to give and receive forgiveness. Knows how to have fun, make your spouse or your best friend laugh, fight with and for one another with grit, knows how to feel, empathize, hold space, and knows how to feed your soul. What would you say are the takeaways for listeners this week?
I think we can keep it pretty simple, that if you are married and you're listening to this episode, it's really just getting back to your foundation of friendship. It's kind of that simple. And then if you are not married, it's recognizing that that's a great place to start, to focus on that friendship that can really kind of hit both, the best and the favorite. And maybe if you're with someone that you're like, I'm infatuated with them, I like being around them, but are they the best for me? If you're feeling like that might not be hitting, might be time to find a new best and favorite.
Get back on the apps. No, maybe use this as a little checklist. Like, are these things that I can see this person able to do, or are they acting in this way?
For sure.
And ask yourself, are you doing the same? Because, it takes two to tango, baby. For sure. Yeah. Well, not marriage gurus, just a couple of married folks sharing what we're learning, what we know to be true, and hopefully it lands. Hopefully it helps someone out there. Yeah. Hopefully it's encouraging to you.
So that's episode 3 in the books.
That's a wrap.
If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.
Please.
I hear people say that it helps with the algorithm, so I'm just going to repeat that.
And, we'd love to hear from listeners. Like, what do you guys really want to hear about? What do you want to know? We've got a whole broad list of topics and things we'd love to cover, but we want to make sure we're, feeding your soul.
And you can also find us on Instagram and like us there, engage with the content, and we're just happy to be here.
Yeah. Shoot this episode to your best/favorite friend. Have a listen together.
Absolutely. Let's do it. So we hope that this quality time has been as enjoyable for you as it's been for us. We hope it's mutual.
Yes.
And until next time.
Till next time.
Time to love again. My time for love is here.